Okay, well, I'm back with Brandon Langley. I'll get it right once again. I hope that some of you may have seen part one of this two-part series with him. Our first part, of course, if you haven't seen that, please go back and watch it. I did not mention in that first video, I know there were probably just hundreds of people that would have subscribed. I would have just asked them to subscribe and like the video. We missed all that. So, Brandon, if you go
Missed
back
opportunity.
look at last week's podcast and you look there and you say, well, man, there weren't many people that liked the video. It was probably because I didn't ask them to. So anyway, if you enjoy this content and certainly whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to it on Spotify or whatever, if you enjoy this, please like it, please subscribe. That's how we get it out to more people. And it is a blessing if you do that. But I am back with Brandon Langley today, pastor at St. Rose Community Church, author. And today we're actually going to be talking about a secondary ministry, something that's secondary out to the pastoring of his local church. But he is a part of a network called the Pillar Network that I've only recently been introduced to over the course of the last year or so. And our church is currently going through the process of prayerfully considering joining with the Pillar Network, and then they're also prayerfully considering whether they're going to let us join with them. So we're working through that, together. Full disclosure, that's where we are, and I don't think this podcast is going to have any bearing on that. But we are talking about them, and Brandon is part of that, and anyway, it's just a really neat ministry, and so we want to talk about that a little bit today. And so, Brandon, we're not going to go through any long introductions with you again, because like I said, we did that in our previous video. But if you would just quickly just kind of share who you are and just share the context that you're in and what your role is with Pillar.
Sure. Yeah. So I serve as lead pastor of St. Rose Community Church, which is a church planted about 10 years ago. And I also serve part-time basis as the associate director of regions for the Pillar Network, and have been serving in that role for about a year and a half now. And I guess I could share a little bit about what that means, what that is on any given day. So, I mean, Pillar Network really is a network of theologically like-minded pastors and churches who are theologically like-minded so that they can do missional things together. There's an alignment in what we believe about the church, about the mission, about theology, that enables us to do church planting, missionary sending, revitalizing together. And so we're essentially an association of churches, not necessarily based on geography, but based on theology, and then kingdom mindedness to do the work together. So, associate director of regions, one of the things that I do is I help set up regions around the country of churches that gather together for the purpose of collaborative church planting and revitalization. And so we have these sort of 60 regions or so around the country of churches that are gathering together at least monthly to hold each other accountable, encourage one another, fellowship, but then also say, hey, how could we potentially plant a church in this neighborhood if we actually resources, time to make it happen?
Okay, well, good deal. Well, let's talk about Pillar just a little bit. I mean, you've been you shared a little bit about your role with them, and certainly just the bones of kind of what it's about in terms of grouping these churches together for church planning and those kind of things. But I mean, the SBC, I mean, and let's just go ahead and clear up too. I mean, the Pillar Network is within the Southern Baptist Convention, and so
sure. So it's required. It's required to be SBC to be a part of the Pillar Network in the United States.
These are strictly SBC churches that are part of this. There may be some, and I've got some brothers, friends and other. They're Baptist, they pastor Baptist churches, but they're non-SBC churches, and so they would not be able to join the Pillar Network. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so that helps. And so we've got, as SBC churches and as the convention, we have this, I mean, there's a broad variety of I guess maybe differences in church life, church structure, those things. I mean, it's held together under the Southern Baptist faith and message. Certainly that's our confession that we hold in common. and those kind of things that sort of governs who can be a part, and the things we ought to at least have in common with one another. And so, because we already have the North American Mission Board, we
That's
have
right.
state conventions, we have the International Mission Board, those things. So, can you share a little bit about how this network got started, and why its founders thought it was necessary to put this network together?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the Southern Baptist Convention and our joint effort to do the mission together,
Mhm.
I mean, the cooperative program, the entities, the system is really amazing.
It
It's an
is.
incredible thing.
Yeah.
It's an incredible mechanism. Um, I think that as particularly ecclesiology has
Mhm.
sharpened over the years, become more particular, and even our understanding of the Great Commission
Yeah.
to be tied particularly to the work of planting churches
Mhm.
and the health of local churches beyond just evangelism, right?
Yes. Yes.
Beyond just evangelism, because there's a sense in which there's a lot of people that who affirm the BFM who I can
Yes.
hit the streets and evangelize with and see
Mhm.
people go to heaven.
Yes.
Now, the
Yeah.
difficulty is that those people who come to faith, whom we evangelize, right, the next step is that they be baptized into a
Mhm.
local church, which takes a particular form. Now
Yeah.
decisions really need to be made. How's
Mhm.
that church going to be led? Is that going to be a single pastor as a CEO with a board of trustees who are kind of the deacons and then a bunch of committees that has been a traditional SBC setup? Or is that church going to be led by a plurality of elders, task specific deacons, almost no committees whatsoever,
Mhm.
and meaningful membership where they're going to do things like church discipline? And, those are different visions for reality in church
Mhm.
life, right?
They
And
are.
so I can go evangelize with the guy who's leading the church with, the 87 committees.
Mhm.
I probably can't pastor alongside of him because we
Yeah.
have very different visions of what that means, right?
Mhm.
What a pastor is, what a sermon is, or at least what I would say is the most faithful kind of preaching, week by
Mhm.
week. Um, uh, I love the brother who's going to differ from me, and I'm going to be in heaven with him. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of things we can do, but planting a church together is going to be really hard,
It is.
/ impossible, right? And so there's just this. I felt as I was in SBC life being so blessed by the North American Mission Board. I mean, I planted through NAM, went through their
Mhm.
5 years of care, met so
Yeah.
many good brothers, but so often, even at the table of my NAM brothers, when I would begin to speak about ecclesiology or ministry philosophy,
Mhm.
we would be kind of speaking different languages
Yeah.
because we're united under the umbrella of the BFM 2000, right? Which is good. Um, but when the rubber meets the road on like planting an actual church, I found myself really needing a narrower lane under
Mhm.
that broader umbrella, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I had been convinced of a lot of convictions to do church in a way that I personally had never experienced in any SBC church. And so, who do I even go to for counsel in doing church that way?
Yeah.
How do I find missionaries overseas that's actually the kind of work that they're doing,
Mhm.
overseas in a different country? Um, because the BFM was not going to be enough for me to practically to be able to carry all that out. So,
Mhm.
man, praise God, the Lord just sort of, I didn't know Pillar existed until I was doing my doctorate on teaching ecclesiology as a means of training church planters at Southern Seminary. And my supervisor connects me with someone who connects me with someone and says, hey, there's a group of guys
Mhm.
that are convictional about these things that are not trying to leave the SBC.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
just trying to stay in the SBC as friendly cooperators, but they
Mhm.
also want to have these convictions
Yeah.
and live them out in their Great Commission work. And so Pillar for me became really a way for me to stay in the SBC
Mhm.
and feel like I had a group that understood what I was saying, how I was saying it, and could really walk alongside of me and cooperate with me beyond us just
Mhm.
sort of giving our money in the pot, right?
Yeah.
And letting someone else steward the pot,
Mhm.
um, which is great. I mean, that's
Yeah.
fine. But I began to be convicted and convinced by Scripture that cooperation is more than that.
Yes.
Cooperation has to be more than me just giving money to the pot for someone else to steward And it's got to be more than just pastoral breakfasts where we all kind of get together and have shallow, my church is bigger than your church conversations.
Oh, no. I mean, we don't have those up here in North Louisiana. That must just be that's just in the New Orleans area. I mean, I had those when I lived down there, but not as much up here.
And there's a place for that. That's fine.
Yeah,
there's a place for that.
Yeah.
But what I wondered in associationalism that took another step on the cooperative side. No, like I've raised up an elder, you've raised up an elder, and we could actually combine our elder teams and our members to go plant this church in this other neighborhood. And because we're so like-minded, those members and those elders would actually be able to work together. They would actually be able to do this thing and not miss a beat because of how similar our ministry philosophies are. And so that I was craving that, and Pillar really has become the tool for like-minded brothers around the state, around the country, to sort of band together with, or a flag to wave and say, hey, if you like doing, or if you're convictional on church planting in this way, here's the flag to sort of rally under, and we can do it this way.
Well, let's talk about those distinctives just for a moment. And you've alluded to these things, in terms of just from my own perspective, as I'm looking at it, and it's certainly what attracted or made me at least want to give a hard look, at the Pillar Network and whether or not this would be a way for our church to connect with others. We have a plurality of elders. We moved to that in the last just few years, and we're seeking to grow in our application of that quality and the strength of that. We have some convictions related to the scriptures, and we're not saying that every other church is wrong. We're just, we still hold to the same. We are able to affirm the Baptist faith and message, and we don't want to leave the SBC. We don't even think that would be has anything to do with being a part of that, in terms of what we've agreed upon to, as far as what governs us. But, and so let's talk about the distinction. For me, like I said, the biggest thing was the training for elders, really looking at that as being not just biblical, but also a really good and practical and helpful way of planning churches and also being a church and doing church. And so that was a huge thing for me. And so let's talk about those distinctives, though. I mean, if we're talking about whether or not someone would think that they might want to look into the Pillar Network, what are the main distinctives that these churches hold together?
Sure. Some of the distinctives, I think everybody's going to be able to sort of nod their head to and say, absolutely. Everybody that's Southern Baptist should say absolutely to some of these, right? So, like, number one, gospel proclamation. I think everyone's going to say, yeah, absolutely. You got to proclaim the gospel to be a church. Biblical authority. I think, again, everybody's going to say, yeah. At the same time, the application of both of those, what Pillar means by that is more specific than just the general, yeah, we believe that. So gospel proclamation, they have a tagline under it that says, we proclaim the good news of our sovereign Lord. And so there's a sense in which, what we're talking about is, like, when we're proclaiming the gospel, we are proclaiming something that God does. Like, he saves. We don't feel the pressure to accomplish the Great Commission by gimmicks or like the scheming or strategy of man. Like, we're going to lean more on providence and sovereignty of God and the accomplishment of that. And so that's going to kind of band us together. Like, we're trusting that God's building his church, doing this work. Biblical authority, more regulative principle. By that, I mean, is like, we're going to structure our church and do things as a group of churches that is totally, I'm getting a phone call right during a podcast, man.
Too, man.
I'm ignoring it. I'm going to chew whoever this is later. No, I'm just kidding. Biblical authority being the concept of, like, man, everything we do at our church, we do it because the Bible prescribes us to do that, right? So those are kind of ones most people nod their heads to. But then you shift over to live exposition. Now, why in the world live exposition? Why would it not just say expositional preaching, right? So expositional preaching would be one thing, because not all Southern Baptist churches do expositional preaching in the typical sense. There's lots of topical preaching within the SBC and those types of things. So that's a ministry philosophy difference. But Pillar went an extra step and said live expositional preaching, and because there is a sense, man, like, if if you think the best way to steward your
Mhm.
giftings, your church, and God's kingdom is by streaming yourself
Yeah.
to 5
Yeah.
locations to
Yeah.
preach,
Yeah.
you and we're going to be in heaven together. Like, that's not a
Mhm.
gospel issue, but we have very different visions
Yes.
of ministry and what we're called to do. You
Mhm.
know, what we're called by God to do. And so if you're streaming yourself to several locations, you're not going to fit into the Pillar Network. We're not saying
Yeah.
you shouldn't be SBC. We're not saying that we hate you, but we're going to differ so much on philosophy of decision making in church.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be hard for us to do planting and
So
revitalizing.
you're not the Pillar Network, folks in the Pillar Network are not planning satellite locations
We are not.
with a big
Definitely not.
screen. Oh man,
Definitely not.
I didn't know that. I'm going to go ahead and just bow out right now,
Yeah,
man.
I know. I'm just squashing all of your
Oh
aspirations and
man,
ambitions.
yeah, I had a vision, man. Yeah. No, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna try not to be sarcastic and
Well, it
but
yeah. And there's good
yeah,
brothers who do it that people are getting saved at their church
that's what.
and
Yeah, yeah.
God's using them. And so the goal of the Pillar Network is not to throw shade at people that
No,
differ in
no.
philosophy of ministry, but the goal is to just recognize that for us to do certain things would be against our conscience. You know,
That's it.
it'd be against our conviction. So how are we gonna figure working together? How are we gonna figure this out, right?
Well, and
Um,
that's been one of the blessings for me in my conversation, not just with you, but with others that are part of the Pillar Network, and even listening to y'all's podcasts and stuff. And I'll link that down in the description as well. The Pillar Network podcast that may help folks to kind of get to know you guys a little better. But one of the blessings for me is that you're not trying to throw shade.
right.
That's very easy for us to do.
Yes.
And unfortunately, many who have great convictions related to the regulative principle and maybe some reform leaning ideas have often gotten a really bad rap, and it may be warranted for being very arrogant about these things
That's right.
and causing, as we're wont to do, causing others to, in some ways, feel that just because you don't agree on these secondary or tertiary things that 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 for whatever reason we're looking down on someone,
Right.
and of course that goes both ways. The guy that has the satellite churches and is preaching to 10,000 people on Sunday morning, I mean, it's very easy also for him to look down from that pedestal
Yeah.
still. And so it goes both ways, but it's not about us. It's got to happen this way, and we're not criticizing the ministry of this. Does come from a place of personal conviction,
Yeah.
as we are led by the Spirit, and we believe informed by the Word of God. So that's huge. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
that's been a real breath of fresh air, because certainly there are other arenas and circles that maybe are not as charitable toward
Yeah.
that don't agree in those
Yeah.
things.
And
So
that's one of the core values that we didn't talk about was the kingdom mindedness bit.
yes.
When I first joined Pillar, I was drawn to those ecclesiological convictions and the
Mhm.
kingdom mindedness bit. I was like, oh yeah, cool. I mean, everybody says that,
Yeah. Yeah.
fine. But that's probably the thing that's been most surprising to me
Mhm.
about the network. It is how important that piece is.
Yes.
That the culture and the feel of the network is very charitable.
Mhm.
And networking within the network is really, guys are networking to figure out how they can give themselves away, how they can give
Yeah.
their churches away.
Mhm.
There really is not a sort of cult of personality or a
Yeah.
celebrityism or a something within the network that I've been so blessed to see churches. I think of Matt Rogers' church, for example. I mean, this brother was pastoring a church of 700,
Mhm.
and just recently, within the last month, they have voted to intentionally split their church
Yeah.
to send over 400 to one location and 200 to another location. And Matt Rogers, who planted the church, led it to be 700, is going with the group of 200
Yeah.
because it best serves their community and best multiplies the gospel. So he
Yeah.
has every opportunity to make a name for himself, to be pastoring a church of over 1,000, but he is intentionally downsizing
Mhm.
because he thinks that multiplication reaches people better, and that is
Yeah.
just incredible to me. And that's sort of that kingdom mindedness bit
Mhm.
is this: we're not trying to build our own kingdom. I mean, we are trying to be faithful stewards of what God's given us, and that's been a real blessing. The cooperative effort is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me, and two, I mean, I know when people hear about, okay, there's this network and it's within the SBC. I mean, I'm sure you guys must be like running people for president of the SBC and trying to, maybe, we're gonna, get behind certain candidates and use the influence and the platform, to change the makeup of the SBC and get people on boards of trustees. I mean, is that going to happen? I mean, is that in the works? I mean, there's something there we need to know about.
No, I mean, I think it's an unfair thing, or it would be an unfair thing to expect people in the Pillar Network to not care about their convictions and what's healthy for the convention, right? And so I think no matter what, I mean, we grew by 130 churches last year, right? There's gonna be a sense, there's gonna be talk, oh, Pillar's trying to take over, they're trying to do this or whatever. It's like, no, they're just a bunch of guys that care about things the same way you care about things, and they're trying to cooperate and be meaningful parts of the convention rather than separatist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a healthy and it's a good thing. I don't think that there's some sort of like, conspiracy.
No nefarious underpinning or undercurrent.
No, absolutely not. But I will say this: to be a Pillar pastor, you better care about the health of the SBC and the direction of the SBC and the healthiness of it. They're going to send messengers. They're going to be involved in things because they've got that kingdom-minded cooperative aspect to them. And so I'd be lying if I said there were certain votes that I hope go a certain way, or
well, of course,
I mean, that's the nature of the mechanism, which is the SBC, is that we're all in this together trying to get the mission to go forward in healthy ways. And so so I hear that kind of talk too, and it's just like, well, no, I mean, they're just passionate, trying to cooperate the same way everybody else is, Well,
I'm just trying to poke you a little bit, that.
No, do it, man.
It's all right. Yeah. Because that was one of the first, and for when I first, just through one of our associate pastors here, just kind of ran into and got to know Evan Key, one of the guys from up here in North Louisiana that's part of the network. That was one of the first things I asked, was just, this is not a political movement. This is not a separatist sort of movement. This is not going to in any way cause people or encourage people to leave the SBC. That's not what we're trying to. That's not what you guys are trying to do, is it? Because there are other things that have been formed in that mold, or at least with those secondary desires. And for me, that wasn't something that I thought Emmanuel needed to be a part of. And so I am thankful for the cooperative spirit. And like you said, I mean, you hold convictions, and regardless, I mean, that you are going to, if you're involved in SBC work on whatever level it might be, you're going to try to live out those convictions and speak to those, but there is no nefarious takeover that's going to take place.
That's right.
That we know of or anything like that. So
that's right. I mean, even like, especially, why do we have this versus NAM, or that kind of stuff? I mean, I work for Pillar. We just planted a church out of our church. It's a NAM church plant, and in fact, every single Pillar church in the States who plants a church, I encourage, be a NAM planter, like give to the cooperative program, let it be a NAM plant, but just recognize that what NAM is doing as an organization and what Pillar is doing as an organization are not actually the exact same things.
Yes.
In fact, I would say NAM is more of a missions agency, whereas Pillar is more of a fraternity of churches that have these similarities, who are trying to identify one another to do good work together. So they're not even doing the exact same things. Pillar cares about church planting and revitalization. NAM cares about church planting and revitalization. But even the approach, they're complementary. They're not competitive to one another. And so I think the relationship between Pillar and NAM has strengthened over the years and is continuing to strengthen. It's very strong here in New Orleans and in several places where I visited and spoken. Many employees of NAM also are at Pillar churches. Same thing with IMB. I mean, Zane Pratt with the IMB is an elder at a Pillar church in Richmond. And so there's
just call him out like that, poor guy.
Oh, that brother's gone through way more than this podcast that he'll ever hear.
I don't think my mom will care. Like I said, she may be the only one watching anyway, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's right.
She's not gonna call in or anything. So All right. Well, that's, I mean, and that's great. And those are just some things that I wanted to clear up and make sure that those things were clear about the network. Now, what, as we kind of wind this thing down, what is the process? I mean, how do you become a pillar church? First and foremost, you want to make sure you agree with the things that Pillar is about and the reasons why you would come together. But
Yeah.
let's say there's a church out there that does, they have strong conviction of the regular principle. Maybe they're a little reform leaning in some of their ways of doing things, and so they're wanting to move toward a plurality of elders or want to be really serious about church membership and those things.
Mhm.
And this sounds like something that would be a real help to me, and I feel like I'm on an island, in
Mhm.
SBC life because of these convictions I have. And so they want to join Pillar Network. What does that process look like?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the practical. It's a smaller benefit, but it's a real benefit. Um, when I've got a church member move to a different city, I mean, we
Mhm,
just had a college student move to San Diego this last year, and they're looking for a church, right?
mhm.
Where do you start, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to try to find a church that does the same things we do, expositional
Mhm.
preaching and all those types of things, you can't necessarily just go to the SBC website and pick a dot on the map,
Yeah.
because if you're going to have all kinds of dots on the map, it's going to be so broad. It's going to take a little while to find something. You can't necessarily go to like a 9 Marks church search or a gospel coalition, because honestly, anybody and their weird cousin can put their name on
They can
there
put
that
their
they got a
name on there. Hey,
church.
we're on one of those. Yeah. Yeah. We
Right?
just
There's no
told them
vetting.
we thought we qualified. They put us on there.
That's right. That's right. And really, a lot of times it's just a church trying to get their name on as many things as
That's
possible
right.
so that their
That's
church can
right.
be found.
Yeah.
So Pillar, it's a little bit more robust than that, right? So there's an initial application, there's a Zoom call interview, which you and I just had recently, which is kind of a relational touch point. There's a theological assessment of about 25
Mm,
questions. There's several statements of faith that have to be affirmed. And that theological assessment gets read by our staff and worked through, and then a final sort of touch point or meeting and a covenant of partnership. So it's not crazy. We're not talking like a 2-day assessment to see if you can plant a church or anything like that. But it's an assessment for theological alignment, that
mhm.
what you say you believe actually translates in your everyday ministry at
Yeah.
your church. And so we can have within the network, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm a Pillar church,"
Mhm.
that we now have some degree of confidence in where
Yeah.
you stand on several things, right? You can kind of start the conversation downstream. You don't have to ask a ton of questions trying to figure out, like, are you kind of a more Andy Stanley, Rick Warren kind of church? Are you a, like, who's your
Exactly.
influences? What do you do? How, if you're a Pillar church, you kind of know what you're going to get, right? There's a
Mhm.
there's a standard convictions that you're going to have, and that assessment sort of at least helps to accomplish that. And so, yeah, so it's easy as there's a link on the website where it says join. You fill out the initial application, it starts the process, and the whole thing can be done in a matter of a few weeks. Most of the time, churches take a lot longer than that, because their
Yeah.
elders have to affirm it, their church has
That's
to
right.
affirm it, and those types of things for them. Because really, the network is a network of churches, not just individual pastors.
Mhm.
So guys don't join the network if it's just the pastor, but their church doesn't want to, right?
Absolutely.
So
Okay. Well, good deal. Well, man, I really appreciate you visiting with me today. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me, and certainly I hope that other churches will see this, other pastors and church leaders, and if
absolutely.
nothing else, they'll have a little better understanding of who the Pillar Network is when they see them at here in Louisiana at the LBC. I think
Mm,
you guys are hoping to be at the LBC this next year, and so we see
yeah,
you there. We can stop by and visit with you a little bit, and um, and certainly we appreciate the work you're doing. And so thank you, man.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks
And
for
we
having
will
me, man.
and we will link the Pillar Network website at the bottom. And there's just a world of information there. Many of these same things that we talked about, and even to get the process started, if there's a church that is looking at that or considering that process is laid out there. And then all
Mhm.
the statements of faith that have to be affirmed, all those things are found there, and y'all's mission statement. And so we'll link that below. And I appreciate you meeting with me today, man. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. If you're in Louisiana, I would love to talk. God's doing some beautiful things through the Pillar churches here in Louisiana, and a beautiful partnership is really starting to take shape. Would love to talk to you.
Amen. Amen. Thanks a lot, man.